Grandmama used to pray, oh Lord, please save them from the evil snares and all the dangers that entangle. Yea, though they walking through the valley of the shadows, just prepare and make them fit for every battle, because I know they bound to come, and I know they bound to fall, but in your bounty, Lord, preserve their beautiful. Right, we still survive and offer grandma's prayers, surrounded by the jungle and the lion's den. Tread light, cause these traps is inconspicuous. They hide right in plain sight, thinking we don't see them when they linger. Look right beneath the surface, then leave a trail of corpses. Crisis, prices, your life a disposable commodity, like living in a fantasy, conditioned to believe that the system even cares whether selling CDs or walking or driving or reading. Look, they don't need a reason. It's just you breathing and being black. When it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all, at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming bloody murder. Said it got me screaming. This gritty city got me on some. Look, get your hand up on my pocket. Distraction, so lazy they use the same tactics, like condom with some trinkets. Just don't let them get to thinking. That light bulb gets a blinking. You know niggas and ideas. Oh dear, my dear, you may not know me, but I know you very well. Foresight, they say hindsight is 2020. Well, tell me something, we gotta see that history is on repeat, and maybe it takes a beat and a melody to speak a little louder than the message in the clouds or the essence in the air. I swear, my God is just so clear that a system driven by fear can never give us nothing but more of the same things. Oh, when it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming. It's murder. Got me screaming, got me. This gritty city got me on some.
It's happening, good people. How y'all doing? We're back. First show of the year. Matter of fact, it's a brand new show. It's a brand new show. We put Riot Starter TV out the pasture. We're back again, reloaded. This is Renegade Siafu TV. We wanted to make sure that this time around that we're clear about the agenda. We wanted to make sure that this is a political platform, and we are looking to inspire people to work. It's about action. It's not just about, hopping behind the microphone and sounding good and looking good and all that type of stuff. So in thoughts and preparations about bringing this show to this platform, we wanted to start it off right. We all know by now that Dr. Mutulu Shakur has been released. He's back with us, and so we realize it's a whole lot of folks out there who only know Dr. Mutulu Shakur's name through hip hop. And that is while we love hip hop, it's an injustice if we just equate Dr. Mutulu Shakur to um, the stepfather or father of anyone. Before he was that, before many of the folks that we acknowledge and respect were born, he was already doing his thing. So we wanted to invite someone on who is a comrade of Dr. Mutulu Shakur, someone who speaks to Dr. Mutulu Shakur, and someone who just released a strong piece called Straight Ahead, The Life of Resistance of Dr. Mutulu Shakur. So I invited our comrade, Dr. Akinyele Umoja, on here today. So I'll be right back with you, and he'll be back with you in about 2 seconds. Stick around. You know what we do around here. RSTV. Bob AK, what's going on, young fella?
You got it, my brother. Free the land. I do it.
Free the land by any means.
You say, young fella, you always call me that.
Man, listen, man. You every time I see you, be looking younger than me. You be moving around
Hey.
like,
No, we working on that, brother.
We're working on it.
We
I was gonna
working
ask you.
on.
I was gonna ask you had Benjamin Button's disease because you know you seem like you get
No,
younger and younger every time I see you.
no. we go check them prescriptions at your ophthalmologist.
That's what it is. The glasses. I had to take them off so I could see. But
Right.
yeah, definitely. You know, I definitely appreciate you coming on, especially for this first reload. You know, that's a real good thing. Good to see you on deck.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
blessing and an honor to be on the first episode of the new show.
without a doubt, without a doubt. I wanna for folks who need a late pass. Of course, this is your second time coming on, but it's your first time on a new show, of course. First time I'm on a new show. But I wanted to ask for folks who are unfamiliar with you, if you don't mind giving a brief bio of who you are, because I don't want to do you any injustice.
Man, well, I'm a member of the Malcolm X grassroots movement and a co-founder of the New African People's Organization. I've been a lifelong uh, participant in the New African Independence movement. I'm 68, so the last 50 years, I've been active in our people's liberation struggle. I'm an educator. I'm a professor at Georgia State University. I've been there like 26 years. I teach in the Africana Studies department. Um, I'm an author. So I was on your show before to talk about my book, We Will Shoot Back. And, you know, we just worked on this editing, this journal that's being released, you know, be available online. The journal's called Souls, but it's a special issue to Dr. Mutulu Shakur. We're working on some other projects that should be out in the next year or so on Robert and Mabel Williams, on Baba Shokwe Lumumba, other things. That's part of what I see my role is, since I write and people in the movement had confidence in me to write. Just, you know, just as you on the air, you know, to use that vehicle to try to document the stories of our people and to make sure that they get to the next generation. So that's part of what my life work is.
No doubt.
I'm a father of two, been married 41 years, and a grandfather of 5.
Yeah. You've been working out here.
Yeah, plus my mama 95.
95.
Yeah, she's 95.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah,
in Compton.
she in Compton in 95?
Yeah.
Your mother triple OG. You talking about she's 95 in Compton.
It's
You know
still
what
with
I'm
a
saying?
clear mind and
Man,
good health.
that's a powerful thing. That's a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah.
Well, we hope that she's around much longer. You
Yes,
know what
sir.
I'm saying? Just to keep on building. But definitely appreciate you know, the bio. Um, you know, Dr. Mutulu Shakur. I know you've been knowing him probably before I even knew he existed. How
Yeah.
long have you known him, matter of fact?
I met him in 1973. I didn't know who he was. In fact, at that time, he was married to a Afeni Shakur. I knew who she was.
Right, without a
And I
doubt.
was kind of blown away because I seen her name, you know, in black with the New York 21 and
Yes.
the Black Panther newspaper, reading her articles. And I think I had read Look for Me in the Whirlwind, but it was a meeting. Mutulu and Afeni came to Los Angeles to try to get the same thing that was established in the Bronx in terms of helping people be cured of heroin addiction through acupuncture and political education. They wanted to get that set up in Los Angeles. They weren't successful. And so, but that was the first time me meeting him. And then I think we reconnected, even though I, you know, would see him and stuff. We reconnected when he and Afeni came to Los Angeles to get Geronimo Gijaga, also known as Geronimo Pratt. They wanted to get people organized to work on him being released. And so they had approached us out there to get working on that. They had at that time a group that's mentioned in the article, the National Task Force for COINTELPRO Litigation and Research. And it was after, you know, a lot of your audience probably knows that, you know, we always believed that we were being infiltrated and divide and conquer tactics, and they were killing folks. But when some white allies broke into an FBI office looking for draft records,
Right.
and they found these documents that proved that COINTELPRO, and they released them to the press, and it was opened up. So Mutulu and Afeni were pioneers in going through the records and seeing how they could be used to get folks who were political prisoners and prisoners of war released. And so they brought that documentation to us about G, and then asked us, since we were on the ground in Los Angeles, and it was going to have to go, the case was going to have to start at LA County to get us actively involved in it. So I initially had some dealings with him there, but then I think where I probably worked with him the closest was after he was incarcerated, because when he was incarcerated here in Atlanta, we started going in and teaching classes there. And the beautiful thing about it was I would come in and I would bring not only my students and other professors, but I would bring community folks in, and working with people like IROS and others, and we would do programs. Beautiful thing, I remember one year, since that was the prison where Marcus Garvey was incarcerated, on Marcus Garvey's birthday, we did an African Culture Day. And we had a ceremony where we came down with Marcus Garvey's portrait.
In the prison.
In the prison. We had a naming ceremony, and the brothers performed and all that. But the most beautiful thing wasn't that we were bringing people in. It was that Dr. Shakur and other elders in there began to do classes with the brothers when we worked there.
That's right.
And that's where the real teaching was going on. And then I thought about this in your introduction. Even though we don't want to limit, and I just call him Mutulu, we don't want to limit Mutulu to being Tupac's stepfather. He has his own organic relationship to hip hop. So one of the things we did was have a hip hop summit in there. And we had it there, and we had it at the federal prison in Coleman, Florida. And I tell a brief story, and this is, I think, one of the ways he helped me personally. We were having these classes. I was teaching these classes in the penitentiary, and I would have we're only 35 men because that's all the room could hold. Weekly we'd have these classes, and so, but I would have the brothers who were over 35 who were most engaged, and the younger brothers who came, they would just listen. So I tried to figure out a way to get the younger brothers to talk. So I started asking them questions at the beginning of the session, and it had a reverse effect. They froze up. And so one of the older brother said, "Man, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm just trying to get everybody involved." He said, "Well, you think we punks up in here, and we ain't no punks." So Dr. Shakur intervened, and he said, "Look, Dr. Umoja," he said, "you're a very good teacher, but one thing you got to learn, if you want to get these younger brothers engaged, you got to come in here talking about hip hop."
Right.
We changed the curriculum, and we did these hip hop summits. And some of those brothers I'm still in touch with today, and they've grown tremendously. But that was the catalyst, because we were able to utilize a language that they felt comfortable and they knew they were experts at.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I learned that from him as a teacher, because he is truly, and you could see in the bio, one of his roles in the movement, from being a young person through the penitentiary, was doing political education with people on a grassroots Malcolm X type level. You know what I mean? And we need more teaching like that.
No, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And it's very important, and I'm glad you said that about using things as a tool. That's what you do as freedom fighters. You know what I'm saying? As a revolutionary, you're going to take whatever materials you could and make it work in the interests of the people. You know what I'm saying? No matter what it is, you can flip it, right?
Right.
and but as long as you're clear about your politics, right?
That's the struggle.
Yeah, that's the main thing, because those lines get blurry sometimes and folks get confused. So it's very important to that political education aspect. I was impressed real quick, just coming to Atlanta in '04. I remember one time I was on Mama and Jerry's show on WFG,
Yeah,
and
that's it.
shout out to Mama and Jerry. You know what I'm saying? One of
I'm
our
a carriage.
Yes, yes, Sister Courage, yeah, a grand ancestor. And I remember I was on her show one time, and this is when Doc was still in Atlanta, and he called in to the
Mm,
show. So I didn't know that he could call in, because again, being a part of this part of movement, the way you and I met, it was around political prisoners.
right.
We was clear about what the mission was. Imam Jamil, Kamal Siddiqui,
I say yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's how I think. Matter of fact, the first time we ever got down was around Kamal Siddiqui.
Right.
Uh,
That rally at the at the court.
yes, yes, yes. Yeah, the
Yeah,
folks in
yeah, yeah,
Tennessee and
yeah.
everything down. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So I remember him calling in, and one of the things he said, he was talking about how folks in the movement got locked up. I mean, it was getting bagged, and he said primarily we was doing things like what Kalonji and FTP was doing on the street. And I'm listening to him. I'm listening so intently, and then I'm like, "Wait, did he just say my name?" So I was like starstruck, because my heroes are freedom fighters. You know what I'm saying? My
Right.
comrades are my heroes. You know what I
Right.
mean? So he said my name. I'm like, damn, like how you know? You know what I mean? So, but I realized at that point, not only was he educating and politicizing inside the joint, he had he had his finger on the pulse of what was going on, not just locally but internationally.
Right.
He
Right.
affected it. I mean, more than a lot of folks that was free,
Right.
quote unquote free, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
so I always found that amazing. I want to get into some stories and whatnot, but I want to take it back to his childhood, right?
Right.
So I understand from the piece that you just wrote, and what you contributed to, that he started his mission young when his mother lost her sight, right?
Right.
So I want to talk about that, because and then I want to hop into, not only that, but his relationship to folks like Baba Herman Ferguson,
Right.
because of course I've heard stories from him, and we can get down on that as well. So give us a little bit about his upbringing in Queens.
Yeah, when he talks about his activism, and he's born in Baltimore in 1950, but then family moves to Queens. But when he talks about his activism, it really begins on the grassroots level. And again, sometimes we got to look to find where the fighters actually are. So a lot of times the fighters ain't in our organizations; they in the community, right?
Right.
But his mother was blind, and he had to negotiate the social service system. He had to be the advocate for his mom when he's a little shorty,
Wow.
when he's a kid. And so that gets him into a sense of that you got to fight for things, and you got to, if you don't advocate for things, then you oftentimes don't get nothing. And he also understood what the system was about. And I didn't know this till I worked on the article. I contacted a brother who grew up with him and who went to junior high school with him. And he said that when they were living in Queens, teenagers, the brothers from the Nation of Islam would come through their neighborhood and pick them up in a van and take them to Harlem. To do what? To hear Malcolm.
I know.
So as you know, a little teenage, really preteen, he's hearing Malcolm X, and that's kind of laying the foundation for him. As well as I think in his neighborhood during that time, Clarence 13X began to have an impact. And so he began to hear the lessons of 5% Nation of Islam, Nation of Gods and Earths. So all that thing that is happening is a Black Power movement. All that thing is developing. And so at the recreation center in his community, there was an elder, a brother who was a vice principal, who's also a member of the Revolutionary Action Movement, who had been Malcolm's, developed Malcolm's freedom school, if you will. Malcolm had a freedom school when he was in an organization of Afro-American unity called the Liberation School. And this Baba's name, ancestor now, Herman Ferguson, who was being, because of his revolutionary perspective, he was being kind of pushed out of his role in the school system. But he worked at Mutulu's at an after school program, and Mutulu made contact with him there. That's one important contact, and he said that Baba Herman Ferguson is his ideological father. So he studied Nkrumah, he studied Mao, he studied Ho Chi Minh, you know, all these great teachers, Malcolm, right, Marcus Garvey. He learned all, you know, all these as a teenager. He encounters Baba Herman, I think, when he's 16. And earlier, even before that, he has some friends from his community, from the Costin family, whose father was involved with Malcolm.
Yes.
Their father was named Saladin Shakur, also known as Abba. And so he meets them, and these two brothers will become Lumumba and Zaid Shakur. Of course, both of them are ancestors now. And, both of them are key founders of the Black Panther Party in New York. So these are some early influences that brother has growing up. So by 1966, he's already defined himself as a revolutionary, not just a Black nationalist, but a revolutionary Black nationalist, because he sees revolution as necessary for Black people to have self-determination, for us to have a nation, any type of independence. Another fatherly influence besides Abba, who is his maybe more spiritual father. He has Herman as an ideological father, but he defines this brother, Sonny Carson. And some of you might be familiar with the old movie, The Education of Sonny Carson. Sonny Carson was a leader of a street organization in Brooklyn. Street organization, what some folks call gangs. And Sonny became politicized, becomes one of the leaders in the movement in New York City, particularly around the question of Black people controlling their schools in their community. He said that Sonny, also known as Abuba Dika in the Black community, was his street father, because from Sonny, he began to work later on in trying to unite the different street forces in the New York area. And that carried over to prisons too, because when Mutulu's in prison, at any prison that he was incarcerated, there was a low level of violence, because he was an agent in bringing brothers together. You know, we're talking about men because it was only men in his institution, but bringing brothers together from a variety of street organizations, not only from street organizations, but the Nation of Islam, Sunnis, you know, people who had revolutionary ideologies, people who were Rastas, you know, from Africa, from the Caribbean, but bringing those forces together and bringing about unity in all the prisons he was incarcerated. But that's what he inherits from Baba Sonny Carson as his street father. So those are his early influences in the movement. Much, you know, I said free the land when I came on. That's the slogan of the New African Independence Movement. And Mutulu became a conscious member of the New African Independence Movement when the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa was founded in 1968 in Detroit, Michigan. He travels there with Baba Herman Ferguson and other members of, you know, the nationalist community in Queens, I should say in New York at that particular time. So when they founded the organization, or the movement, I should say, 1968, there was this conference called the Black Governmental Conference. You had folks there like Amiri Baraka. You had people representing SNCC. You had the great Queen Mother Moore, Malana Karinga, all those type of folks were there. There were 500 people
Betty
there.
Shabazz as well, I think.
Betty Shabazz, thank you.
Right.
Thank you. I get old, even though you say I'm a young man, I get old, forget.
It's all good. We together on this track.
But Betty was there. This is 3 years after the assassination of Malcolm, and was called by a group called the Malcolm X Society. It was led by an attorney, one of Malcolm's attorneys, Milton Henry, later known as Gaidi Obadele, and also his brother Mario Obadele. And I should add the two, Nana Osurjaman Adafumi, who founded Oyotunji Village and the Yoruba revitalization movement. He was a part of that. So you kind of had this united front of nationalists at that time, and they declared their independence from the United States. And Mutulu, at that time, 18 years old, or 17 really, would declare his independence from the United States. And he began to work for the rest of his life for Black people to have their own nation. A group called for reparations. They called for 5 states as a territory to establish a new nation, and they set up a provisional government, a temporary government, until we get independence. And Herman became the Minister of Education there. So he was a part of that particular effort too at that particular time, and dedicated himself to that. One of the things I remember, a lot of times when people think about nationalism, they think it's racial exclusivism. And one of the things I think that's important in the story of Mutulu is the membership in the Republic of New Africa of a Japanese woman, Yuri Kochiyama.
Rising power to Yuri. Yes.
Yes.
Another one that had an impeccable mind too, man.
My God.
I would see her in the Bay all the time.
Too?
Oh yeah, every year when I would be in the Bay, every time I see
okay.
Kalonji from Atlanta, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, no, I definitely
oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, let me segue for a minute.
Yes.
During those days, the early 70s, I started corresponding with her because she was doing a lot of political prisoner work.
Was this when she was in Harlem, or she was
in Harlem?
Okay.
Yeah, in the early 70s. So I would write her and we'd start talking on the phone, and then she would send me some material. It would take months for that material to get there because people playing with the mail and stuff.
Right.
And so but when I finally met her, it was when we had this march from Harlem to the United Nations, and I was given the assignment on the march to see if I saw any elders and tell them they could ride in this limo we had. And so I see this lady limping, and it was Yuri. She had twisted her ankle. It's like a 5-mile march, and I said, "Excuse me, miss, but you could." She said, and then wait a minute. I said, "Damn, this is Yuri Kochiyama." And she said, Akinyele Umoja. She called my whole name. And she said, nah, she wasn't gonna take no ride. She said she waited too long for this march to the United Nations. Man, that's when I met her. But yeah, no, she's a powerful elder. But he worked with her in the Republic of New Africa. She was became a citizen because some of your audience probably know that she was associated with Malcolm also.
Right.
And she is the person Malcolm was assassinated, who first on the scene to try to provide him with some medical assistance, would try to resuscitate him during that particular time, and had been close to Malcolm from the Nation of Islam days. So she worked with Herman, and Herman, I think from what Mutulu told me, swore her into the RNA. So I just want to make the point that it's not if you're down with our people being self-determining, you could build solidarity with us and be a part of the movement. There are all sorts of people part of all African nations, so New Africa wouldn't be different. But I just wanted to add that.
No. That's powerful, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. I went to her house one time, and she had so much stuff going back to like, I mean, literally probably the 50s. And I remember she said, Yeah.
I've been visiting there one time.
So she pulled out this book. She said, you know the Sunni Alis, right? I said, yeah, that's my family, whatever. She said, let me show you these pictures. She showed me two pictures that Kofi and Afua had drew when they was like 4 or 5 years old. She still had them.
That's
She
funny.
still had them. She said she kept them at the house one time, and they drew those pictures. But
Wow.
you mentioned a few names. I mean, you know what I'm saying? 'Cause you know, and it's like for folks that don't know, um, one of the names you mentioned, of course, Sonny Carson, who for folks who are, you know, as far as the hip hop connection with Black Watch and X Clan, he was the father
Right.
of Lumumba, which was
Yes.
Professor X. You know, so you know, I
Right.
want to make that point when we talk about just that connection with the hip hop artists and so on and
Right.
so forth.
Right.
But I also and you mentioned Baba Herman, who I was talking to Danny Simmons one time, who is Russell and Run's brother, and they talked about how Baba Herman was comrades with their father when they were organizing out in Ocean View, Queens. So
Right.
was it Ocean
Ocean
View,
Hill,
Ocean Hill,
Brownsville.
Ocean
It's
Hill,
in
right?
Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brooklyn.
Yes.
I'm still thinking about Mutulu, but
Yeah.
but
No, I hear you.
yeah, but it's just all of these connections. And I talked another thing when you mentioned Baba Herman. He was telling us we interviewed him in our documentary, Organizers in the Cool. One of the things he was talking about in there was that the church situation you talked about going back. 68 was the original piece, and then 69 they had that shootout. So he talked about how young Mutulu was. So if you could speak to his actions during that particular shootout, and tell the folks we've had uh Mama Tamu on, and she spoke
Ah,
a little bit about it. So I want to, you know, if you could touch on Mutulu's role at that next
yeah.
conflict.
Now, the shootout that I'm calling you Mutulu, that Kalonji is referring to is in 1969. The following meeting, that
Yeah.
founding meeting I was talking about, and it was held. The Republic of New Africa held the meeting at the Church of Aretha Franklin's father, C.L. Franklin. If y'all seen, I think a couple of not documentaries, dramas they've done on Aretha Franklin recently. One of them kind of mentions this incident, but it's in 1969 March, and you know, there's security at the event, and Mutulu goes, and many people from New York go because, as Kalonji mentioned, um, in New York during that time, there was this issue where the Black community in Brooklyn were trying to take over the school system. They were going to establish, they wanted to have community control of schools. And Mutulu was very much involved in that, even though he's a youngster at that time. He's 17. And, you know, there's been all this talk about anti-Semitism during this time. During that time, it was a discussion too, because many of the teachers in Black schools at that time were Jewish, and they didn't want to comply to a Black takeover of the school system. And so many of them walked out during that time. So Mutulu and others went into the schools and started teaching the shorties. Him and another brother who's an ancestor now, a political prisoner, Abdul Majid, and others went into the schools and taught the kids. So how does this connect to RNA? When the city took back over the schools, the RNA was telling RNA leaders, including Sonny Carson, including Baba Herman Ferguson, including a Mario Baddelli, who we mentioned, they were saying, look, y'all should just separate from New York and set up your own independent nation, and you could be up under RNA and just run your own piece. And so they took a contingent of people to New York to discuss this proposal. While they're in New York, and this is one of the main things on the agenda, as Queen Mother Moore and the brother we mentioned before, Attorney Milton Henry, who was at that time the acting president, Robert Williams was in exile. and he was actually the president of the Republic of New Africa. But when they were leaving the building, there was some drama, we'll say, with some cops outside who came out with guns raised. There was a conflict between them and his security. One of the cops, his name is in the article, I can't remember his name, was killed on the scene. And you know, it was some shooting. Quiet is kept. I was told that there was some brothers who shot, some snipers who shot and allowed the security to retreat after the police came and attacked them. And I you know, we mentioned Pac earlier. I always remember how Pac said the police are the biggest gang on the street. And, you know, one of theirs went down, so they came back hard, you know, and it shot up the church. You know, wasn't no negotiations. They just came in straight with violence. And so at that particular time, and, you know, folks were, you know, some of the New Africans were, and people who were there at the conference were wounded. Many people were beat, but Mutulu put his body, that time, again, 17 years old, he put his body over Ilua Ferguson, who was the wife of Herman Ferguson. And I believe he put it over Herman too. I think he put it over both of them.
He said both of them. Yeah.
Put it over both of them and protected them as the bullets are flying.
Right.
You know, bullets are flying everywhere. They arrested over 100 people, took them to court. I mean, took them to jail. But then Reverend C.L. Franklin, Aretha's father, gets on the phone. He calls Judge George Crockett, and Judge Crockett comes down to the police station. He holds arraignment sessions right there and releases damn near everybody who was arrested. So when I talked to Mutulu about this, he said, when we talked about C.L. Franklin, that man got me out of jail. So that, you know, they got out of jail and they went back to New York. And then the strange thing is, he said when he got back to New York, he began to tell people about what happened. And one of the people he told was Sekou Odinga, who was vamped on the next day in the New York 21 case and escaped and left the country. So that's how things were happening during that period of time. You know, revolutionaries were being attacked all across the United States. That's one of the things I think. COINTELPRO still exists, but it was very intense and all over the damn. You know, it was definitely a level of low intensity war, and I don't even know if we could call it low intensity. The way they were attacking people and arresting people and killing people and forcing people into exile during that particular moment in our history. I think for Mutulu, it had an important impact, you know, because I think he felt at that time, the way they were attacked by the police, that our people needed a stronger defense capacity than we had at that present moment. And I think he rededicated himself. And, you know, I've introduced Baba Herman Ferguson, but I really didn't introduce him right. Baba Herman has always believed in Black people defending themselves. And he even set up, recognizing that where they lived in New York, they were surrounded by white suburbs with a lot of right-wing paramilitary organizations, just like we surrounded today in Atlanta and other cities. By these right-wing paramilitary organizations, people who are training and training and armed. And so that's what Baba Herman set up a gun club in Queens, New York, around that particular thing. And Mutulu was very much him and Abdul, who mentioned before, who were teenagers, were very much a part of that. Of course, Baba Herman, and I skipped over, they created a conspiracy case to get him off the street, claiming that he wanted to blow up the Statue of Liberty and that he wanted to assassinate Roy Wilkins of the NAACP and Whitney Young of the Urban League, some conservative, Uncle Tom type black leaders. He wanted to assassinate them to create a race war or something of that nature. And so they utilized that conspiracy case. And again, he was convicted in the case, but Mutulu and Abdul, as again, teenagers, led their defense effort. And not only that, but they provided security and organized rallies and things like that for the rest of the members of that committee. But with Herman being arrested, and Herman was one of the leaders of the RNA in the New York area, Mutulu had to step up and began to be one of the leaders of the Republic of New Africa in the New York area. Just mentioning that, I think a lot of people think that Mutulu was a Panther in the Black Panther Party.
Yeah.
Now, he wasn't in the Black Panther Party, but as I mentioned, two of his childhood friends helped found the Black Panther Party in New York. And then another friend, Abdul Majid, was one of the leaders of the Black Panther Party in Queens, New York, in Jamaica, Queens. In Jamaica, Queens, the Black Panther Party and the Republic of New Africa shared an office.
Mm.
So even though he wasn't in the party, and this confused me for a while because you mentioned Kamal Siddiqui before.
Right.
And when he was in jail here in Fulton County, I got to visit him one time. One time they forgot my ass was in there. I was in there for hours, but it was cool. We got to know each other a lot better. But right. Kamal Siddiqui said Mutulu Shakur, when Kamal Siddiqui, who was in the Black Panther Party in Queens, said Mutulu Shakur taught him about imperialism. He didn't know what imperialism was, you know, the concept that it's exploitation of people across borders. He said he learned that concept from Mutulu. And I said, Mutulu? And I said, he said, I learned it from him in political education class. I said, well, damn, Mutulu wasn't a Panther. Right. So he said, yeah, but he's the one who taught the class.
Right. Okay. Whatever you call them. Right.
you know, they work together.
Right.
And so Mutulu has this expertise. He's going to work with the Panthers in the office there. It wasn't no thing about, oh, you in that organization, you know, we ain't going to F with y'all, you know. Yeah. And so that's part of where that confusion comes from, is his close association with so many Panthers, particularly in the New York area. Of course, many of the Panthers in the New York area became citizens of the Republic of New Africa. We mentioned Sekou Odinga before. He said he's been a citizen of the Republic of New Africa since 1969, because many of them, some of the brothers, you know, like what's my brother's name? Bullwhip. Yeah. Same thing. They said they've been part of the Republic of New Africa, you know, since, you know, like 69, 70. And a lot of that is Herman Ferguson's influence as an elder in that community. A lot of them looked up to Herman Ferguson and had it, you know.
No doubt. I think Baba Bilal as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah. So it wasn't a big sectarian difference with them, you know, on that. And of course, even on the West Coast, you more had this dynamic of cultural nationalism versus revolutionary nationalism. So a lot of people in LA, in Oakland, wouldn't like wear African clothes or have African names, but that wasn't true in New York. I mean, you got Mutulu Shakur, you got Kwesi Balagoon, you got Sekou Odinga, you got Lumumba Shakur. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that wasn't a dynamic there, which did create some challenges between New York and not LA. I don't want to say LA because G wasn't like that. Geronimo wasn't like that either. But the Oakland leadership with Huey and them, I would say.
I want to point out,
you better stop me because I start rambling.
Oh no, it's all good. I mean, that's what this piece is about. You know, it's not entertainment. It's political education and it's history at the same time. I want to point out, you know, for the viewers, because we're constantly talking about political prisoners. Kamal Siddiqui is a current political prisoner. He is shout out to his daughter Kasise, who's been on the platform a few times. He's the father of children with Pam Hanna Kasise, shout out to her, and also Asada Shakur, the father of Asada Shakur's daughter. When we making these connections with family, right? We talked about we've mentioned Abba, Saladin Shakur, a few times. I want to talk about if you could touch on the origins of the Shakur family, the Shakur clan, because a lot of folks get confused when they hear Shakur, and there's some people that take on the name Shakur and they have nothing to do with that particular family, and they don't understand that it's not just a name that you adopt from Tupac or Asada, so on and so forth. So I want to, if possible, touch on who he was. We know that he just celebrated his birthday December 13th. Of course, he's an ancestor, but we try to keep that keep it as as shining as possible. So if you could touch on who he was and how that whole thing came about.
And I'll share you the little bit I know, because I don't know a whole lot, and I didn't have the honor of meeting Abba. I did have the honor of meeting Lumumba Shakur, but and of course Zaid Shakur was murdered, assassinated before, as I was just becoming a part of the movement.
And he was on the highway with Asada and Sundiata, for folks who don't know Zaid Shakur, right?
Yeah. I remember when I found out. I remember that day I found out from newspaper clippings and stuff. But Abba Shakur, as I said, was an associate. He was in the Nation of Islam. I think he might have left the Nation of Islam with Malcolm or before Malcolm. And the thing is, when you look at the book, Look for Me in the Whirlwind, and Lumumba is one of the people who contributes to that. And he talks about his father sending him bean pies while he's in juvenile incarceration, and telling him about Islam and telling him about Malcolm, and him telling his friend Sekou. And so that he has impact because he's an elder who's Muslim and not an Uncle Tom Muslim.
Right.
But he's a Muslim and a Malcolm oriented type of Islam. And you could have an Uncle Tom in Christianity and Ifa, and they really
no discrimination.
Right. Uncle Toms go wide. But he was in the Malcolm X tradition. So he introduces them to that. And then he becomes like a spiritual elder because people respect him and they respect his sons. And so young people who are part of the Black Panther Party, some who are not a part of the Black Panther Party, they can ask, can they utilize his name and last name? Because, many of us, like Kalonji Changa, right? Many of us, once we learn the origin of these names, we want to choose a name that's reflective of a heritage, reflective of us resisting any type of colonial mentality, right? Slave mentality. So we embrace African names. Like I chose Umoja, and it was a group, House of Umoja. So that's where I get my last name from. And similar in New York, a lot of the young people in that generation began to choose Shakur, who are associated with, particularly through those brothers, and asked permission. Afeni was married to Lumumba before she was married to Mutulu.
Right.
And she asked permission, can she still use the Shakur name?
Right.
After she asked Abba, and he gave her permission. At least that's what she told me, that she could still use the Shakur name. And then she, doubly got it when she married Mutulu, who already asked for it. So it's we used to say it was a tribe,
right?
And so there are a lot, and I don't know. I remember when his daughter Mutulu and her family's daughter Setua got married. and I couldn't make the wedding. And I asked somebody who was a close friend about it. She said, "You know, it was a secure wedding." And right away, I knew what she meant.
Right.
You know, it was like, for me, a Shakur wedding it's gonna have some Islamic influence. It's gonna have some street influence.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's gonna have some revolutionary influence. It's just gonna be reflective of the love of our country culture. When I say street, you know, it's about a grassroots element of our community. It ain't bourgeois.
Right.
You
right.
know, so people feel free to relate. It ain't gonna be stuck up.
Right.
So when she said a Shakur, I knew that's what she meant. It was gonna have
gonna be
some
the
feel
business.
to it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's a beautiful thing. I want to because Dr. Mutulu Shakur, you know, there should be at some point a movie on Dr. Mutulu Shakur, because when you talk about, you know, him, and you mentioned Sekou Odinga and Robert Williams and folks like that, I mean, you're talking about, you know, these were freedom fighters. Of course, we had Sylvia Berardini on recently.
Yeah, that was a great interview.
Yeah, glad you checked it out, man. Definitely. And that's the goal for us to get the proper information out, because if we wait for um someone else to tell it, it's gonna be told, but it's not gonna be whole, you know. So, you know, so we want to try to tap in as much as possible. I want to talk about you know, because one of the things you mentioned was the health aspects. And we know that, just coming from the whole acupuncture side of things, Doc still has a number of different students, second and third generations, you know,
Right.
many that we know who still carrying on that tradition. I want to, as far as you know, how did you know, Dr. Mutulu Shakur get into the acupuncture side? And I want to definitely touch on Lincoln Hospital and the takeovers, and, you know, the influence with the young lord, so on and so forth. So we can tap into that. That'd be powerful.
Yeah, no, that's it's so much to this story. To his story and his history, you know, which is, you know, really say why they wanted to keep him locked up too.
Without a doubt.
You
Yes.
know, but you know, some of your audience probably know that in the 70s, I think it's in 1970, that the Young Lords Party, we mentioned Black Panther Party, but, you know, another vanguard party in the Puerto Rican independence movement was the Young Lords Party that operated in Puerto Rican communities, particularly in New York and Chicago. And they were working with people in the Bronx area of New York, around just the hospital and healthcare, and, you know, healthcare they had in Lincoln, that was called Lincoln Hospital, was just a very abusive in terms of how they dealing with the needs of folks there. So they organized around that, and they had some takeovers. One of the takeovers, they took over a part of the hospital that was dealing with detoxification, and really they helped build that part up. And Mutulu was recruited again as a political education person to help bring political education. Around that time, he was in a car accident, and a couple of his sons, and I'm not sure which sons it was. I need to ask him about this later on. But a couple of his sons were in a car and needed medical attention, not emergency attention, but just with healing from the accident. And Yuri Kochiyama recommended he get acupuncture, and he saw how important the efficacy of acupuncture. And then they began to see, oh, this can be applied to help people withdraw from heroin addiction. So he brings that in. And then they began to train at Lincoln Hospital around healing people from heroin addiction. You know, because when you're coming off of heroin, you know, your body, you're going to be throwing up. It's going to be a whole lot of things going on with your body. So with the withdrawal, they kind of help you deal with the withdrawal physically that way. But the main thing was, and that's what they explained during that time, was if you didn't have a consciousness of your political reality, then you gonna go back to the same shit that got you addicted. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna go right back there. So the political education was very important to what they were doing. And Doc Mutulu began to push that not only in Lincoln, but it became to be something he began to advocate in the medical community. He had a relationship with the United Church of Christ at that time, and they helped him go around and to become an advocate. There was a challenge at that time because the U.S. government was pushing methadone as a way to withdraw from heroin. But methadone, they felt had adverse physical harm to people, as well as that's just another drug to become addicted.
Addiction, right?
And so they wanted
legal version of it,
more independent. Right. So there was this whole challenge, particularly with the pharmaceutical companies, with what he was doing, and he was advocating that particular time. You mentioned that there's people following in that tradition. At some point, the city of New York, the whole thing was revolutionaries, the Black Panther Party, because the Black Panthers became involved in Lincoln Detox, the Young Lords, as we mentioned, the Republic of New Africa. They would say the Black Liberation Army. All these elements are involved in Lincoln Hospital, and so they worked the city worked to take the hospital back over, and Mutulu and others began to open their own clinic in Harlem, the Black Acupuncture Advisory Association of North America, BANA, and they set up a clinic in Harlem where I think they were treating maybe 75 people a week, and he was training other doctors.
It's powerful.
Training not only Black folks, but Asians, and because the first time I had acupuncture, it was a Japanese guy in LA, Tatsuo Hirano, and he was trained by Mutulu.
And listen, Mama Fulani gave me the first acupuncture. Fulani Sumi Ali, and So no, that's powerful. I want to, because there's so many things we talk about Dr. Mutulu. We can do like 3 hours and not even crack the surface.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I wanted to ask. I wanted to take it back to Pop, since folks, that many the young folks point in utilizing that hip hop vehicle we talked about earlier.
Right.
The code of the thug life. I want to. If you could share your knowledge of the code of the thug life, because of the fact that it's attributed to Pop,
Right.
But if we could kind of dabble on that a little bit, as far as what that was about.
Well, there's a video that actually caused a lot of controversy, but it's online. It's online. It's on YouTube. I think it might be called Cocaine City or something. And somebody took some footage from Mutulu and his brother, who's deceased now, Chaz Williams, having a conversation. So I just, people want to know my sources.
I know.
But this is a source independent from what I was told. Okay, but actually, Mutulu was trying to come up with, again, I said, working with Sonny Carson, how can we unite the forces on the streets? How can we bring more unity in the community? And so, and he's in prison, right at this point. And I Mutulu always kept the peace, but I think he was also saying, okay, he understands that everybody ain't at the same level of consciousness and don't have the same code that he's been operating by. So how can we come up with something that's going to bring more unity? And if we can get the shot callers in here to agree to it, we could take it out to the shot callers out there. So they met with different folks who were in the federal system in particular, and they got some agreements. Pop was very popular at that time. Pac was still alive. And so, and Pac had begun to talk about thug life, which, I forgot which, I think it's Thug Angel. Mutulu's on there, and he talks about, and I was the same way when I first heard about Thug. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
But Pac was trying to flip the whole Thug piece on his head, and he, defined it really more like the people who've been abused, been oppressed, been ignored by this system, and by even black elite folk.
Right.
Those are the thugs, and so Mutulu, understanding that, he has a conversation with Pac and presents the code and asks Pac to promote it. They put Pac's name on it to help promote it and get it out there, because again, he's so damn popular.
That's right.
No, I'm just thinking nobody could have foresaw how popular he became. Like, I had some preachers say he's more popular than Jesus, but preachers said that
in some areas, right?
yeah. So, but anyway, and Pac helped promote it, use his name, help promote it, and get it out there. I know he did a few rallies around it in New York, in Brooklyn. And they just tried to promote it. And again, the whole thrust is to bring more unity. I remember at the time, I had a comrade write me, and he was saying, because some of the things in it is like, well, we don't want a drug sold to pregnant women.
Right.
And so I remember, so some people might say, well, damn, we don't want to sell drugs at all. But the reality is, we got some people out there selling drugs. So how can we bring them in? So how can we bring it where it's not as chaotic in our community? We got people out here just shooting gangster wild, right?
Right.
And so how can we rein some of that in and make it so that our elders feel like they can walk the streets safe?
Right.
That we could feel like our children are safe going to school and coming back home. And so it was like a tactical thing. And then we work on politically educating and transforming our community and creating economic things, as well as we try to transform this system. And that was one of the major things I think I got from working with them brothers too when we were going in the penitentiary. A lot of them said, man, the stuff we learning now, I should have learned before I got here.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I'm glad you pointed that out, because people deal with absolutes, and there are no absolutes. And the reality is, if you're going to be an organizer, just like you mentioned Jesus Church and everything, you have to speak the language of the people. You have to meet the people where you at.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And as Yui talked about, people learning through observation and participation. You spoke about how you went in first, and they was like thinking that you thought they was some suckers, because you speaking a language like and I'm just just giving some wild thoughts. Look, we need to do this and so on and so forth. And it's like, look, this is where we are.
Right.
This is where you move from. And that is the importance of folks like, when you talk about leadership, folks like Captain John Huggins and Bunchy Carter, being able to reach the people. If they're in the streets, if they're in the strip club, then that's where you go. You understand what I'm saying? People always talk about, well, you preaching to the choir. The choirs don't always know the sermon. They're there to sing. You know what I'm saying? And some of the folks in the choir,
right,
they might have been drafted just to do that.
Right.
So when we talk about movement, we have to be able to figure out what level of communication we're on, what frequency we're on. It's just like radio or whatever. You got to tune in, you got to tap in, and it's a science, and it's brilliant for someone like Dr. Mutulu Shakur. He's in prison. So if you're going to teach the brothers and sisters, because of the fact I'm sure the information traveled, if you're going to teach them, then you have to be able to reach them.
Right.
And that's part of the issue that the quote unquote public school system has.
Right.
Because they're trained to train.
Right.
They're not taught to teach.
Right. No.
You understand what I'm saying? Being certified don't
Right.
make you qualified.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that that's important because we often, many of us have gotten criticisms. Well, wow, this brother over here, man, I heard him say such and such. Well, okay, well, we maybe next time he won't say that. You know what I'm saying? But you can't just throw the throw the revolutionary out throw the gun out with the revolutionary. As we talk about all the time, man, a revolutionary might necessarily be a righteous man. They might just be against the state. That don't mean they're gonna be walking old ladies across the street or whatever, so on and so forth, or buying Girl Scout cookies. This means that I'm against this. So we figure out where can we reach people and advance that political education. He was eventually, of course, we've been going back and forth, which I think is cool because to give folks context. I want to talk about, the charges that landed him in prison, and your thoughts as far as like, we talk about counterinsurgency, we talk about being involved in being being a prisoner of war. I wonder if you don't mind, for folks who are checking us out, give us the difference between a political prisoner and a prisoner of war. If you can,
yeah, I will.
make
I
that
will.
distinction.
A political prisoner is basically anybody who's incarcerated for their political beliefs or political activities. And that's a variety. It's a very broad category. And one of the terms I learned from him, and I actually saw that in practice when we were doing this work. Another term Mutulu uses it, and this I learned from him. I don't know if he created it or not. He used the term politicized prisoner. Right. And that's somebody like we talk about George, we talk about Malcolm, how they went into prison maybe for, like George went for, common robbery, and Malcolm went for being a burglar. But then they got conscious while they there.
Right.
And then because they conscious, then they become political prisoners because they start treating them differently once they got some consciousness. And I saw that happening with the brothers we were working with in the prison program. I don't want to divert the conversation.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, well, there was one particular instance where the brothers decided they wanted to do a fundraiser for children of prisoners, not their children, but just children of prisoners, with the program that's now called Forever Family in Atlanta.
Right.
Once the prison system found out about this, they said they put them under investigation and they locked them up, Mutulu for the longest, for about 3 months, put them in segregation. And when the brothers came out, we said, that's what he means by a politicized prison.
Right.
Because y'all were targeted because y'all doing this effort that they don't approve.
Right.
But a prisoner of war, we got people who are captured because they were involved in military activity as combatants. And under international law, they're known as prisoners of war. If, for instance, we have a rally, and we talked about this Kamal Siddiqui rally that we had, that you organized years ago. And say if somebody was on post, I remember you had somebody walk me back to the MARTA station to protect me. And one of those brothers is armed and he defends us, and he's arrested for that. Technically, he could be considered a prisoner of war. But that's just a certain type of military activity. What Mutulu was charged with, they said it was a conspiracy. The government said it was a conspiracy by folks to take money from U.S. financial institutions and contribute that money back to the movement. And what they said during that time, and they had documented evidence that money was going to Zimbabwe to support the liberation movement in Zimbabwe. Right. They said, and there was evidence that money went to like youth activities. children's camps and things of that nature during that time. They argued some of that money went to support the acupuncture clinic in Harlem and rallies and things like that to political prisoners, families, things of that money. The money was being taken. The term we used at that time, and I still use. I ain't gave up the game yet. I know some people call it robberies.
Right.
You called it, and I still call it an expropriation. These to me were liberation forces. And the thing in Mutulu's case that was interesting was Chokwe Lumumba as his attorney, and we will publish this later. We tried to get this in this journal. We couldn't get it in this journal. But Chokwe Lumumba as his attorney made an argument, not saying Mutulu was involved in anything, not saying Mutulu did this, he did that, but saying, look, what you're charging him with, including the liberation of Assata Shakur from the penitentiary, were all acts by a liberation movement fighting to free his people. It wasn't like, okay, we doing this, and I'm a
criminal act.
I'm gonna come up.
That's right. That's right.
I'm gonna buy a Benz or Lexus with this money. Now that wasn't what it was about. It was about taking these resources from capitalist institutions and turning them back over to the people. You had Sylvia on late last year, and that's part of what Sylvia was charged with also in a previous trial. Sekou Odinga was charged with, including the liberation of Assata. They specifically are particularly charged, those two, with the liberation of Assata, because again, that was a military act committed by liberation forces to free one of our political prisoners from prison. And I will say that was one of the greatest days of my life.
And listen,
so when that happened, we were on a damn high. So, it was like really exhilarated the movement that we had that victory at that particular time. So yeah, that's what distinguishes a prisoner of war. And of course, in the journal, when people see it, Mutulu writes on some of these concepts. He's written on them himself. I saw the interview that you all did, you and Jared Ball did on guerrilla intellectuals. Mutulu is a guerrilla, a revolutionary intellectual,
without a doubt.
I don't even know if he ever been to college.
Right. And I was going to say that, and he earned, and that's the beauty of this work. It's like, he no one's going to question whether or not he took the Hippocratic oath. You know what I'm saying? His actions and his work speak to that. I want to.
But he's certified in Chinese medicine, though.
Absolutely, yeah. But regardless, even if he wasn't,
whatever you're doing, it shit work.
He ain't Dr. Dre. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
He the real deal. One thing I wanted to point out real quick, because of course, political education is key. You mentioned the word expropriation, and I think that you said that's what you all used to say, and we still say it, and we have to, and it's important because these terms, we have to distinguish the difference between like you said, political action and a quote unquote criminal act.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we're not talking about victims, because as the Ruber pointed out, a revolutionary is never a victim. So, many of our freedom fighters, they're not, it's not an argument of guilt or innocence. It's not about, whether you did it or not. It's why these people were kidnapped or captured in the first place. So, sometimes the other part is irrelevant. Liberating Assata, yes, that's a revolutionary act. She was supposed to have been liberated because the reason that she was in there, she was shot and kidnapped, and her comrade was murdered, and her other comrade just getting out of prison at what, 86 years old?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Which I'm grateful that we can, because I mean, and I'm sure you can attest to this, there was a time that it seemed like no political prisoners were getting out, or they were few and far in between. So I never dreamed of seeing Dr. Mutulu Shakur out, Sekou, Sundiata.
Right.
I even go with Daruba, Sylvia,
I'll go
Maryland.
as far
Unfortunately,
back
how
as
they play their
Geronimo,
yeah, yeah.
and evidence was pretty clear, but it was how they ain't never gonna let him out, you know.
Right, right, right. So it's a that's why we have to keep that mindset of free them all. We
I
have to.
say,
And someone asked in the chat about the United States and their take on political prisoners. They don't acknowledge any black political prisoners. They don't acknowledge political prisoners in America.
right,
Let's be clear about that. The United States is such a criminal institution
right,
that they will make you think that the only victims are those who respond. I mean, excuse me, those uh, who are struck because of political forces outside of the United States.
right,
You know what I'm saying? Or those who are inside who, like you said, folks like these police officers
right,
who,
exactly,
yeah, they're acknowledging, okay, these people were murdered or assaulted, whatever, so on and so forth. But we know that there's absolutely no regard to anyone considered a political prisoner. So much so, we had Baba Jalil Muntakeen on several times, and even with him, when it was time for him to be released, you had the Attorney General up in New York, I believe it's Letitia Graham,
mm.
who, for all practical purposes, was my age. We're looking at Jalil, who literally went in the joint about 9 months when I was 9 months old.
Yeah, yeah. Jalil's what? He's 69, 70. What?
Yeah,
Oh,
so yeah, we just he had a birthday recently, I believe 69. He's
yeah.
probably watching now. If you are Jalil, you can put your age in the chat for AK.
Right. I know we were close in age because he
Okay,
was on the
okay.
younger end of that, you know.
Right,
Yeah,
right, right. But in saying all that, we don't get it twisted because as you mentioned earlier about the question of race, right? It's a black judge who's currently
right,
sitting on Mumir's case.
right,
You know what I'm saying? There's plenty of Africans who, white supremacy goes beyond just your complexion.
right,
you know, and then Black liberation does as well because we mentioned Sylvia Berardini, we mentioned folks like Marilyn Buck. These were folks who went ahead and took that hit. Yuri Kochiyama, who fought for the Black liberation movement as a Japanese woman.
right.
You know what I'm saying? So we have to always remember that, as Imam Jamil Alameen, formerly H. Rap Brown, would say, to be black is necessary, but it ain't sufficient. You
Sure.
know what I'm saying? When we're
Mhm.
dealing with the state. Um, I want to ask, how is Doc? You've been speaking to him. Um, how's he doing right now? If you don't mind
He's
sharing
his
some.
spirit is strong.
Right on.
His spirit is strong. Actually, I talked to him earlier today, and one thing, that's one of the most resilient people I've ever met, and he's always thinking about what's next and where do we go from here, for our people. So now he is good. Uh, he's still dealing with the medical challenges, but again, that spirit is strong. The brother actually said, he didn't tell me this, but he told Baba Watani, he said he died already and came back
Hmm.
because he went through some stuff medically, in terms of his health. But his spirit is strong. We're hoping that we trying to get him set up where he's going to be talking to folks soon, and people will get to hear from him. And I know he got something to say. And again, I think that's one of the reasons they didn't want him out here, because the force he's played historically inside and outside. He was supposed to be released in 2016.
Right. Right.
And then the argument the federal parole board made at that time is that he was still basically a revolutionary and he was still going to commit these crimes,
Right.
right? They use evidence. They use the title of my article is called "Straight Ahead," and that he was using language in his correspondence like "straight ahead" or "stiff resistance," and that was the evidence they used that he's still a revolutionary. he actually was put in segregation when he was in Victorville prison in California. He was on a call, like you said, he called Mama and Jerry's program.
WFG,
He
right.
called a program at Cal State Northridge in California. Danny Glover was president at the program, and Mutulu raised the question that just like they had Truth and Reconciliation in South Africa and several countries across the world, globe, there hasn't been one in the United States, particularly for COINTELPRO era political prisoners and prisoners of war. And so they said, and hearing what he said, that he was starting, Kalonji, a riot.
Wow.
And since we talked about riot starter earlier, he was starting a riot, and they put him in segregation. And since he was in segregation, that caused him to initially, even before what he's dealing with now, have a stroke, you know, because he's isolated from, you know, food he was using before, herbs, exercise, all of these things. And you know, he has high blood pressure, has hypertension anyway, so that affected his health. He had a stroke that he's come back from. And
right.
so because I remember visiting him during that time, and somebody said, well, how is he doing? I said, well, he's a little bit slower, but he's still quicker than most people I know.
Yeah,
But he, you know, he's recovered from that, you know, so
yeah.
he's still sharp and wants to contribute, but they were concerned. He was given a compassionate release because physically, you know,
Right.
you know, he ain't the brother that we've known for all these years, but his mind's still there, and he's fighting with everything he can to make sure that he's in good health, and he's got support. Our community has supported him, so we thank all who supported the fundraising. Still contribute because he still needs help.
Right. Right.
I don't know if you can post that post that for the audience, how they can contribute.
What's their website again? Mutulushakur.org.
MutulusShakur.com.
Okay.
And there are links there on MutulusShakur.com on how you can still contribute to his medical. Support those who supported us.
Right
you
on,
know,
right
we got to support, you know, so when other people had a Veterans Day, we support our veterans, right?
Without
our
question.
soldiers.
Without question. I want to, you know, before we let you travel, I want to, and that's the correct spelling, MutulusShakur.com, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right on. So, no problem. That's our duty. We know that you mentioned Straight Ahead, and that's the title of the piece you wrote, Straight Ahead: The Life of Resistance of Dr. Mutulu Shakur. If you don't mind, tell us, because we're going to share the link in a few seconds with the audience here that is here. Tell us, what did that you know, what does Straight Ahead mean? Why did you choose that title, and what this piece is, you know, why folks should check it out? What is the piece about, basically?
I chose that title. That's a title that he's always used in correspondence. And I think during that particular time, when I say that particular time, let me clarify, during a period of time, he's coming into consciousness and he's becoming active. There were jazz musicians and their music, like John Coltrane, was called straight ahead music. And the music kind of felt like, I could only say what it feels like. It felt like, yeah, we're moving forward. We are in rumble, and we really creating our own thing. You know what I mean? It's not like we're trying to play orchestra music or things like other people. We're doing our own thing using our own scales or whatever, our own rules. And so it kind of represented more of a self-determination in our music. And so, and they described that at that time as straight ahead. And so, but it's also like, we're not going to let these obstacles mess with us. We're moving forward. In the Grenadian Revolution, they said forward ever, backward never. And so he uses that correspondence in his music, and that's kind of what it represents, a forward motion of our people, the forward resistance of our people. and not letting any obstacles, mental, spiritual, economic, whatever, stop us. We're going to rumble. And so that's what he means by that. The article, the essay kind of looks at his, as it says, a life of resistance. How does he come into consciousness? Who influences him? How does he, and then how does he carry on the tradition of these spiritual fathers? So he continues to be not only a Black nationalist, but a revolutionary Black nationalist and an internationalist. You know, he's supportive of the Zimbabwean struggle. He works with radical white folks who follow in the tradition of John Brown, like you had Sister Comrade Sylvia on. He works with the Puerto Rican independence movement. And so, you know, he works with different forces, but he's always clear. His base and his objective is to free our people, to free particularly New Africa. But he's also Pan-Africanist, you know. When I talked to him today, he said that one of the things that he thinks the movement have really slept on is how Muammar Gaddafi was killed and mutilated, and nobody said, and we ain't say nothing. We ain't really say nothing about that. And Muammar Gaddafi was trying to make the continent of Africa more stable. He gave support, financial support to organizations here and efforts here in the United States and around the world. So, but we, you know, it was really no response to that heinous killing of him with a Black president at that time too.
That's right. That's right.
You know, we got to point out. So, but he's Pan-African. He's always been global in his perspective. So we talk about that somewhat in the article. We talk about his role as a health worker. We talk about what it's after he gets incarcerated. We talk about his case, but we talk about after he's incarcerated, what role he plays. And one of my favorite parts in the article that I wish I could work on even more to get more information is before he's incarcerated in the 70s, there are 2 cases in the United States where Black communities were under siege by white racists. One in Wilmington, North Carolina, which led to the case of the Wilmington 10, Ben Chavis and them, and the other in Cairo, Illinois, where the Black community was surrounded by white racists. And in both cases, Mutulu led a contingent of folks to come and give military support to those communities as well. And help. One of the people I talked to was Brother Chewy Ferguson, who was a co-defendant of Sekou Odinga, who went with Mutulu to Wilmington, North Carolina. And he said they helped train people to defend their own community. So to me, that's an untold story that I want to get more information. The only reason I didn't want to slow up the article, but I need to get into some archives to get more information or to be able to talk to him more about it. But when he was incarcerated, I didn't have the access to him that I do now. And so hopefully we can build on that. Because when you talked about there needs to be a movie, sometimes we could just do one particular story. What happened in Wilmington? What happened in Cairo? And and there's people's names I don't know in these communities who form groups to defend their community against these white racists. And they talk from right, you know. So I think some of these stories are real instructive, or should be instructive to us. What was done in the recent past. We ain't talking, you know, it happened during my lifetime. I ain't, you know, I know I'm getting old, but
you ain't that old, man. Go ahead on with that. Sound like you trying to creep off the battlefield, man. Go ahead on with that.
No. Y'all still got me for a minute.
Okay, good. Hey, as long as I'm here, you should be here.
Hey, but I tell you, I can't run as fast as I used to. Somebody gonna have to do the running.
Hey, I can't run as fast as I used to. This what come with it. I want to I definitely appreciate you coming on. Just for the sake of the audience, I want to leave them. You mentioned two terms several times, so we try to bring about as much clarity as possible. You mentioned that he was a revolutionary black nationalist, and you mentioned that he was a part of. You talked about New Africa, so if you don't mind touching on those two particular phrases, terms, and before we let you on up out of this, off the block, that would be grand, because we want to make sure that people are clear, because sometimes folks come up with their own,
Right.
meanings, definitions, so on and so forth.
Well, when I say a revolutionary nationalist, black nationalism is for me, it's just a belief in black people having an identity, having our own identity separate from the United States, or even desiring an existence separate from the United States, having our own space. For me, a revolutionary black nationalist, though, sees the only way we're going to get our own existence or any form of self-determination, and it has to be a revolution. That it ain't nobody's going to give it to us. That we're going to have to make it where we're ungovernable to do that. There has to be a tradition of resistance built up in our people. In some of the Spanish-speaking countries, they call it the tradition. I call it some people call it maroon tradition. I call it a Quilombo tradition because that was a term they used for those people in Africa. But not just to be separate, but we gotta actually force them to give us our freedom. And we gotta again become ungovernable through whatever means we have available to us to do that. And so that's what I mean by revolutionary black nationalists. It ain't gonna be, we're not gonna pray our way out of it. We're not gonna legislate our way out of it. We're gonna use praying and legislation, but that ain't gonna be the way it happens. It's gonna happen through our total resistance. And so New Africa and New African, as I mentioned in 1968, these elders like Queen Mother Moore, like Betty Shabazz, like Surgeman Adafume, Imam Jamil H. Rap Brown wasn't there, but he said that, hey, I'm down with this. But we had different elements of the movement who came together, declared their independence from the United States, said they wanted sovereignty, that we want our own nation, we want reparations. And so when they wanted to come up with a name for our new nation, it was Queen Mother Moore who suggested we call it New Africa. I think Baba Amari wanted to call it New Songhai, but she said, no, we New Africa. And so many of us in that tradition define ourselves as New Africans. And, when we talk about our nation, when I know people be saying Wakanda forever, I'll be saying New Africa forever. That's what we got to bring into existence. That's what we got to teach our babies about right now. That's what we got to organize toward for the future. We got to bring a nation into existence, but we build a nation right now in our relationships, in the institutions we build, and most importantly in our consciousness, because the first territory, first land we got to free is this land, this territory up here.
Free the mind, and what they say, free the mind and your ass to follow, right?
That's right. That's it right there. Funkadelic was on point.
You better know it. Better act like they know. You know what I'm saying? Hey, Baba AK, definitely appreciate you coming on board. For folks who don't already have your book, give them the correct title of your book that they should own in their library if we're talking about being serious about movement and struggle.
The book is We Will Shoot Back: Armed Resistance in the Mississippi Freedom Movement.
Right on.
Armed Resistance in the Mississippi Freedom Movement. So thanks for allowing me to share that.
Without a doubt. And also check out the journal, which you see on the page right now. It's mutulushakur.com/souls- or hyphen journal. What's that, backslash?
Yeah, whatever.
Hey man,
oh, English was never I know I'm right.
Man, listen, you know what I'm saying? In other words, go to Mutulushakur.com and get all things Mutulu, and that's the official site that you can actually donate and assist with his recovery, and also any other programs that he has coming up, because we're confident. We heard what the state was saying, talking about, they didn't plan on him making it. We don't agree with that. We reject that deposit. We reject that narrative, and we look forward to him healing up, being strong, and hitting the communities with us. And we look forward to bringing them on this platform right here, man.
No doubt. No doubt.
That's necessary. But definitely, Baba, we appreciate you coming on. Whenever you wanna holler, stop through. You know how to reach me.
I appreciate that. I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. And I appreciate the other shows you're doing too. Y'all doing a great job with that.
Yes, sir. We appreciate you as well, and we're looking forward to getting getting down more, and making sure that the correct information and political education is out there. So free the land.
Free the land.
Yes, sir. And
By any
we'll take
means
you on
necessary.
by any means necessary. Stay strong. Get a love to the family.
Likewise. Likewise. Peace and power.
Right on. You're checking out realizing that I was muted all this time. How y'all doing? We good out here? Okay, good. Anyway, you're watching. I said all that stuff and y'all didn't hear none of it. Y'all felt it though. How about that? Anyway, you're checking out Renegade Siafu TV, new platform here on Black Power Media. Make sure you support what it is we're doing. Please share what it is we're bringing to the table. And we appreciate you. Appreciate you all joining us. And if you have any ideas for shows or any of that type stuff, make sure you drop it on us. Um, Follow us on these are my platforms above me right here. I can do this like some of these other folks. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. That's my own YouTube channel. I'm gonna have some content that might not be on Black Power Media, so make sure you follow my YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is at Kalonji Changa, and also I'm on TikTok now. Children said I should be on it, so I'm there. But make sure you support that, and make sure you continue to support Black Power Media. Go to blackpowermedia.org for anything you've missed, and make sure that you stay in tune with our pieces on YouTube. And again, if you have any show ideas, thoughts, or suggestions, anybody you want us to bring on, tag them on social media and tag us and let us know, and we'll figure out what we can do. Stay on top. Stay ready for revolution, and we'll see y'all in the whirlwind. Peace.